Isekai Food Wars in another world with Jeff Bezos. I don't know, since it's MAPPA, you can call it Attack on Carbs. I don't know what you want to call it. Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skills is a new series that is airing in the winter 2023 anime season. I've just checked out the first episode of it, and I gotta say, I'm pretty impressed. But this is my thoughts on the 12-episode series, so let's jump right into it. Campfire Cooking opens up with a guy named Tsuyoshi who has just been transported to another world, a fantasy world, and he's alongside 3 other people. And immediately the kingdom is celebrating. They have their heroes that will save their kingdom. And so immediately they decide to check each one of these people's skills. One's a warrior, one's a mage, one's a healer, and then they check Tsuyoshi, who has the unique skill of online groceries. So yeah, immediately everybody's like, yeah, that's kind of useless. Even the other people that were summoned immediately start mocking him. I would think they'd be more concerned about the fact they're in another world and not so much what Tsuyoshi skills are, but it seems like these other heroes that were summoned alongside of him are perfectly fine with the idea of saving this kingdom. But for Tsuyoshi's case, he tells the king, hey, I don't think I'm going to be very useful, so I'm just going to go. And they're like, yeah, go ahead and go, and gave him some gold. And what kind of follows this is Tsuyoshi now having a bag of gold. He decides to change his outfit because he stands out like a sore thumb. But immediately he goes into an inn and then tries out his skills. He opens up his status screen and sees all the stuff that he has. He has an item box that he can put stuff inside of. And yes, he checks out his online grocerying skill, which pretty much brings up an online shopping network, essentially. And the kind of funny thing is that he can select things that he wants. He buys a bottle of water, a little snack, and then he goes to buy it and it says insufficient funds. So he actually has to insert his coins into the data screen and it pays for it. And he thinks to himself, man, this is actually a really incredible skill if you think about it, and the higher-ups don't realize how incredible this is, so I should probably get the heck out of here. He doesn't want to stick around. He's seen the king and the queen. They looked really shady. They were lavished in a bunch of money, so he figured these are kind of some shady fellows. I should probably get out of this town, get out of this kingdom. So he immediately gets onto a carriage and heads towards the border. Well, as he's in this carriage, he starts to talk to a merchant that's there. And he's talking about how he's come across this soap and how this soap is a luxury in this world, obviously. But then he gets to kind of pressing this merchant on exactly how special the skills are that he has. First off being the item box. This merchant says, wow, that's incredible. No, I don't have an item box. I have to put everything in this bag. Only 1 in 1,000 people will have the skill item box. And then he kind of presses on him, well, what about appraisal skill? How cool is appraisal skills? Nobody has appraisal skills. Every merchant would love to have the appraisal skill, but unfortunately only heroes have appraisal skills. And plus, items that are able to do appraisal are kept in guilds and higher ups. So this kind of tells Tsuyoshi that it's a good chance that nobody's going to figure out his unique abilities because only certain people can actually appraise. Well, this merchant tells him one more interesting thing that I think is probably going to come into effect later on. As he's heading for this border to get out of there, the merchant says that it's a good idea that he's planning on getting out of this kingdom, because word has that this kingdom is looking to close its borders soon. And as he finds it from this conversation from some fighters later on, yeah, it looks like this kingdom's looking at starting some fights with other countries. And so a lot of the fighters are actually planning on leaving because they just want to fight monsters. They don't want to fight wars. Well, unfortunately, the border's kind of not letting any caravans through, so Tsuyoshi has to go and hire a group from the guild to protect him and escort him out of the country. He pays 8 gold coin, gets a group, and they go out, and he says that he'll cover all their food. And so as they're traveling, he'll make some food with his skill and his cooking stove that everybody thinks is a magic cooking stove. And they all love Tsuyoshi's food. Again, if you think about it, the minor spices that we can get from our modern times is absolutely incredible to the taste buds of somebody that's in this type of setting. It gets to the point where every time he goes to cook, everybody kind of huddles around him to watch him. And he, fakes the fact that, it's kind of embarrassing for you guys to watch because he wants to use his skill and he doesn't want them to see that he's using this online shopping skill. And this all leads to the point where he decides to marinate some boar meat, and the smell of it is so amazing. It catches the attention of a nearby Fenrir. And this Fenrir approaches both him and his party, at which point he says, let me eat that. And so they let him eat it. And then he says, make me more. And he makes more. And he says, make me more. And he keeps making him more and more until he finally runs out of meat. To which this Fenrir decides to tell Tsuyoshi, I'm going to do you a favor. I'm going to become your familiar. I'm going to make a pact with you. And Tsuyoshi's like, that's kind of a bad thing. I mean, even this party's afraid of this guy, so this is probably not a good idea. He's like, no, I'm going to refuse. And then this Fenrir's like, huh? Look, I just don't think it's, and then eventually he decides to accept it. To which point, yes, they make a pact. And the pact pretty much requires Tsuyoshi to take care of this Finra. And what the Finra wants is 3 meals a day. And if you think about how much boar meat he just spent to feed this thing, it's probably going to cost him a fortune. So even though he's got this big OP Finra with him, the problem is that he's now going to have to feed this thing. So my thoughts on Campfire cooking in another world with my absurd skills. I am actually very, very surprised how much I enjoyed this show. I honestly came into it going, oh wow, MAPPA's doing an Isekai. This is incredibly rare. Typically MAPPA's not, I don't think MAPPA's ever done another Isekai. They probably have. I'm just not looking hard enough. But it is kind of shocking to have MAPPA doing this. Plus the fact that MAPPA's still doing Vinland Saga this season, so they're doing 2 shows this season. Now, we'll say, Campfire Cooking is not the most incredibly action-packed show ever, so there's not going to be crazy animation here. We're not talking Attack on Titan. And I would even argue the action scenes that we did get where his party is having to take down monsters wasn't really animated. But I will say overall, the visual style and the amount of effort they're putting into the detail and the backdrops and everything looks really good. And yes, extremely overly detailed meat cutting process, which I don't know. I'm still debating if it's CGI or not. I mean, the fingers look very CGI sausage, but I don't know. It looked like it could have been maybe overlaid animation over the CGI because it looked really good. It was a really nice. It's the biggest praise the show's gonna get is the fact that the meat cut was super detailed. But no, it looks good. The cooking process is good. I think the thing that obviously is going to be my personal misgiving coming into the show is I'm not for these types of foodie shows. Despite my stature, I am not into food. I just don't like. I'm not into food. I don't care about reaction around foods. But I think for the most part, this show really kept it under wraps. Like, it didn't get too detailed of his cooking process. It doesn't get into too much detail about every single integral thing about what he's putting together. And the food reactions aren't over the top. I mean, they did have the final one where he feeds them the marinated meat. They kind of got all glimmery and stuff like that. But this isn't like Food Wars. It's not pushing it too far. And so that I kind of appreciate that. Even despite the fact that I have a misgiving for food shows, this isn't going over the top. What I think I'm kind of enjoying so far is that this feels like one of those kind of slow life isekais where it's not about fighting the big boss. It's not about getting OP abilities. It's more about you have this very unique skill and you're utilizing it in an interesting way. There's a couple aspects to Tsuyoshi that makes him technically unique in this world. Yes, he's a guy from our modern times, like 20-something-year-old, thrown in this world. And yes, trying to get the heck out of the kingdom because it obviously seems like the kingdom is a little bit shady. But what he's kind of doing is that his unique skill is to buy stuff on some sort of grocery store, online store. But he still has to pay for it. That was the interesting thing. He still has to pay for it. He still has to put coin into it. But the oddity that he obviously has that this is modern time food. Food that's been obviously processed and given a lot of spices to give a lot of flavor. Us being in this modern times, we have perfected the taste of food. And so to bring it to this world that just, most travelers going out into the world is just eating dried meat and stuff, to have a hot, warm, cooked meal that has all these nice spices in it is really incredible. Not only that, but there's this added bonus to what Tsuyoshi's doing. Everything that he gets from the store and that he cooks seems to have added attributes to it. So it's kind of like your Tales of games where whenever you cook a meal and you feed it to your party, they'll get stat boosts for a certain amount of time. And so everybody's like talking about how, man, eating a warm meal just really warms you up to the point where you feel stronger. No, they're actually getting stronger. Like, he's actually making his party stronger by cooking them food. So there's an added bonus. But he obviously wants to keep a lot of that stuff secret. Yes, the kingdom knows that he has some weird online grocer. What does that even mean? But he knows what that is. And still, he's trying to keep all that stuff secret because he doesn't want to become pretty much a guinea pig. The moment that he realized that his skills can add stats to people, he doesn't want anybody to know because he's afraid that some army or something like that's going to put him to work cooking food endlessly for their men so they can send him out to war or something like that. So he wants to keep all that stuff under wraps. Like I said, the interesting, more broader story they're kind of hinting at, and what the direction that my mind's going right now. Again, this merchant's talking about the fact that this kingdom is locking itself up, it's closing up its borders, and that they're starting problems. Well, what it's sort of indicating to me, because of the fact that it's going out of its way for him to point out that these kings and queens are living lavishly. That's all kings and queens. Nothing special there, Tsuyoshi. But he doesn't trust them. and he's afraid of them. So he decides to leave the kingdom, and they're locking down the border. They're talking about starting wars. My assumption there is they just summon heroes, and they want the heroes to protect the kingdom. And now they're suddenly starting wars. Well, my mind immediately goes to that there's probably this kingdom's going to use these heroes to essentially attack other countries. And I think Tsuyoshi getting the heck out of Dodge. He's like, I don't want to be involved with this. I'm going to get out of here. I don't know that they're going to rope him back into that story. I hope not, because, again, this sort of goes into the trope that I think has been so overplayed lately in these isekais and stuff, and technically in just the general fantasy genre overall, is the kicked out of the hero's party. The idea of somebody that isn't cool and all the rest of the people look down upon him. Literally, the warrior that was summoned with him was like, oh my gosh, online grocer? What a useless skill. They're already looking down upon him like, really? He got summoned just like you, and you're so hyped up already about this and feeling really proud about your skills. I'm hoping they don't really dive into that. Just let that be. Let that be the overall story, and just focus on Tsuyoshi enjoying his time. And I think they're doing a good job. They're really doing, so far, I enjoyed the entire episode. Just his trying to figure out where he's going, trying to get away from the kingdom itself, getting a party, the party really enjoying his time. I think the interaction with the party was really good. It kind of emphasized on this idea that he's sort of trying to cover up for the fact that he has this stuff. Oh yeah, that bread that I just fed you, that's from my hometown. They're like, oh wait, this is something precious. I wouldn't want to take that from me. It's like, no, it's perfectly fine. Okay, well, I'm going to look forward to your future meals. Like, these people generally like what he's making for them. They kind of brush off the idea that they were feeling like, oh gosh, we had to escort one person, but now they're overjoyed. Like, this is some good food, good times, warm meal. It's benefit after benefit to them doing this job for him. So you kind of see that give and take with the party itself that I really appreciated. And yes, the Fenrir, the Fenrir. I think that'll probably be an interesting little mechanic to add to it. Hopefully it doesn't get too tiresome, this idea of this big, overpowered Fenrir that's probably going to protect him from bad guys, while at the same time he's having to cook for him endlessly because this thing's huge. I did get a kick out of the fact that Fenrir was voiced by the voice of Ainz, Momonga. So having him sit there giving him that look like, you're going to make a pact with me, and he's like, well, I think I'm going to refuse. You're going to make a pact with me. In Ainz's voice was really good. It even has that same kind of echo voice to him. Like they altered his voice just like Ainz, so it's very similar. But again, I'm hoping there's a nice little dynamic there, and obviously it seems like based on a lot of the characters that have already been voiced, selected for voicing, has been pretty much mostly monsters. I figured that a lot of monsters are going to really like Tsuyoshi. So we'll see how it goes from here. We'll see how his skill itself advances. We'll see how the characters around him advance. All that stuff's really going to be telling is if this is just going to be a chill, relaxing next life isekai, or if it's going to be something that has, some substance in there. Again, not to say that I want him to have to get involved with the heroes and they're all looking down upon him and the kingdoms are at war. I don't need all that stuff. But just some really good writing, good chemistry between the characters. I think that's, so far, the chemistry's been pretty solid. Or just figuring out ways that he can essentially make a good coin with his skill. If you think about it, if he just spends maybe a couple copper to buy, a single little packaged bread, he can sell it to somebody for a lot more copper, and he makes a lot of money that way. Buy and resell, that alone is a lot of money. He even points out the fact that when he went to this one store, they were selling this magical stove, which is, he has a little plate, and it has like this little magic ring on it, and you activate the mana, and it creates fire. Well, yes, it's pretty much like a camping stove. And if they wanted 50 gold for that magic stove and he can just create his own, he can make a fortune that way. But we'll see. So far, looks really good visually. Music's decent, just enough to give some atmosphere to it. And yes, I'm enjoying the character so far and the chemistry. So we'll see where it goes from here. But that's my thoughts on MAPPA's new Isekai, Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below, comment. Let me know what you thought of this series if you're going to be checking it out. Additionally, if you're new to the channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get all my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, we have a Patreon link, tips link, and a membership button down there. I greatly appreciate everybody's support, and y'all take care.